The Drake versus Kendrick Lamar rap feud caught a lot of our attention, and many people are interested by how it developed over the course of the two rappers' professional relationship. Rap battles in general are very fascinating as one watches MCs showcase their lyrical abilities and compete to see who can come up with the better rhymes, especially if they're making up lines on the spot. They are true acts of wit and showmanship. When we look at hip-hop culture today, we can see that it has actually transcended the musical space and is now influencing fashion, popular linguistics, and cultural trends all over the world. That it is now one of the most popular musical genres on earth. But where did hip-hop culture itself even come from? Where did the tradition of battle rap come from? And are the rumors about hip-hop being corrupted by corporate and government interests true? These are the questions I want to explore. So today, we're going to talk about the origin of hip-hop, its growing influence on culture, and the rumors of conspiracy that surrounds it. Most hip-hop heads know about some of the most famous acts in rap music, like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Salt and Peppa, Beastie Boys, and A Tribe Called Quest. But are there any answers as to how the genre of rap evolved? Here's what I was able to find. The first known musical form that featured any type of rhythmic storytelling was the song Noah by a gospel quartet from Houston, Texas called the Jubilaires. There's a popular performance of the song from 1946 available online that people can still watch today. In August 1973, a Jamaican American named DJ Kool Herc threw a party in the South Bronx. He made music using turntables, laying the foundation for what we know today as turntablism and scratching. He is recognized as the creator of hip-hop music and credited for innovating instrumental breakbeats on records. Believe it or not, many of the people involved in the creation of hip-hop were actually people of Caribbean and Latin American descent who came from immigrant families. House parties held in the Bronx is where hip-hop first became popular. Starting out as an underground culture, it spread from community to community as it was played at block parties. The origin of the term hip-hop is unknown. However, one of the oldest uses of the phrase can be found in a 1671 English satirical play called The Rehearsal. Hip-hop culture itself is generally comprised of four distinct components: MCing or rapping, scratching with turntables or DJing, breakdancing, and graffiti art or writing. At events and parties, rappers had the role of MCs or masters of ceremonies at DJ dance events. The term DJ is short for disc jockey. They were the one who played music at the event for everyone to dance to. The job of the MC was to keep the audience engaged by telling jokes between tracks and encouraging everyone to keep dancing while the DJ played their set. Hip-hop music is heavily influenced by other genres of music like funk, blues, and jazz, as well as rhythm and blues from the 1950s and 1960s. Hip-hop culture emerged as a response to the economic and political inequality that people were facing in the years following the Civil Rights era, and was a part of the Black arts movement, which started back in the 1960s to promote Black identity through art, music, theater, and music. As an art form, rap was a way that young people asserted their identities and political beliefs throughout the United States of America, as they relayed stories about their experiences living in the harsh economic and social conditions of inner cities that had been neglected by their government representatives, and describing the tumultuous mental state that these difficult environments left them with. At the time of hip-hop culture's development, gang-related activity was common in the South Bronx, and many young people were manipulated into joining them. To try to combat this issue, the Universal Zulu Nation, a hip-hop awareness group, was founded by Africa Bambaataa, an American DJ, rapper, and record producer of Jamaican and Barbadian descent. The United Zulu Nation was founded in 1973 to help these young people put their energy into creative pursuits through hip-hop culture, rather than engaging with the local gangs in the community. I want to take a moment to pause and talk about the presence of gangs in the United States. Sometimes there's a lot of confusion about gangs and what ethnic groups are involved in them. Gangs have a very long history in the United States of America. They have existed on the East Coast of the United States since the early 1780s following the American Revolution, and there have been gangs of various ethnic groups in American culture. New York in particular was known for producing the first street gang in U.S. history around the 1820s. This gang was called the 40 Thieves. The 40 Thieves were an Irish-American gang that was famous for terrorizing the neighborhood of 5 Points during the 1800s. Led by Edward Coleman, the 40 Thieves controlled 5 Points for well over a decade. Their criminality even included collaborating with corrupt politicians by using their intimidation of and influence over the residents of the neighborhood to coerce them into voting for these crooked representatives in exchange for political and legal favors. Eventually, due to the terribly subpar living conditions residents faced, the government implemented large-scale urban renewal programs to improve the neighborhood's infrastructure. Today, what used to be 5 Points is now part of the northeastern and eastern portions of Chinatown in Lower Manhattan. I shared this aside to show that gangs have been prevalent for a long time in American history. They did not randomly show up in the 80s or 90s, and there have been American gangs of various ethnic groups in the country's history. Okay, back to the story. In 1979, one of the first hip-hop records was released. This record was called Rapper's Delight, and it was by a New Jersey rap group called the Sugar Hill Gang. It became the first rap song to become mainstream. Before long, hip-hop became popular on the radio. Battle rap is a style of rapping performed by 2 or more challengers that involves boasting and insulting each other through use of wordplay, disses, and braggadocio. Battle rap is often performed unrehearsed, as the competitors have to come up with rhymes on the spot with no preparation beforehand. They are judged by their ability to be clever and quick-witted with their delivery, as well as their masterful use of poetic devices in order to create a better verse than their opponent. Rapping itself is a form of rhythmic spoken delivery that feature various poetic devices like rhyme, alliteration, hyperbole, simile, puns, euphemisms, and allegory. Rappers also incorporate a type of behavior called braggadocio when performing. Braggadocio is a type of boastful and arrogant behavior that a rapper uses to create a persona and entertain an audience. Battle rap is believed to have been invented in the New York scene in the 1980s. The art form was influenced by the African American performance of capping. Capping is a type of verbal competition where men try to outdo each other in their ability to use creative and boastful language to create a facade that impresses and entertains a gathered audience. The one who the crowd finds more entertaining wins. The subject matter that rappers often rhyme about include a mixture of tracks that explore illegal, boastful, and explicit material, also known as gangsta rap, in addition to tracks that explore political and philosophical ideas, better known as conscious rap. Here are a few of the most famous rap battles in hip-hop history. First up, we have Kool Moe Dee versus Busy Bee. This battle happened back in 1981, and it's considered the first rap battle ever recorded, and influenced the rappers who came up after this to integrate more complex lyrical skill into their work. Next, we have Eazy-E versus Dr. Dre. The intensity of this battle resulted in Eazy-E dropping what is remembered as one of the best battle records of all time on October 19th, 1993. I'll leave the link to it in the description. If you do go and listen to this record, come back and tell me what you think about it. I'm very curious about your opinions. Lastly, there's Tupac versus Biggie. This battle occurred in 1995. Though it ended with a tie, it was probably the most memorable rap battle in hip-hop history, and will most likely go down to be remembered for generations to come. The feud did end with both men losing their lives, Tupac in 1996 and Biggie in 1997. The notoriously explicit and misogynistic lyrics, as well as the glorification of gang life in rap music, caused a number of people to hold the opinion that the genre does more harm than good. Civil rights activist C. Dolores Tucker actively campaigned against rap music, which she saw as a threat to the betterment of the Black community. She actively campaigned against the promotion of gangster rap throughout the 1990s. There were female MCs like Queen Latifah, Yo-Yo, Da Brat, MC Lyte, and Eve, who made an effort to combat the way rap traditionally objectified and dehumanized women by debating hip-hop's misogynistic ideologies in their own music. There were also other female rappers like Lil' Kim and Foxy Brown who chose to combat these misogynistic tropes by curating a hyper-amatory image that presented them as being in control of their hypersensuality and men's consumption of it. They used their lyrics to express dominance over men, therefore challenging the pre-existing notion that women were the passive subordinates of men. In 2012, an unsigned letter was written by an individual who came from Europe in the early 1980s to take a position as a decision maker in the music industry. This letter was about an alleged meeting that was held back in 1991 that comprised of 25 to 30 executives from private prisons and the music industry. It was emailed to a blog called Hip Hop is Red. The letter talked about the influence of the music industry on public attitudes. Since technology and media weren't accessible to people like they are today, the industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way they wanted. The letter alleged that the music companies that were present at the meeting had invested millions of dollars into the building of privately owned prisons, and that the influence of the music industry had the power to impact the profitability of their investments in these privately owned prisons. The companies we worked for had invested millions into the building of privately owned prisons, and that our positions of influence in the music industry would actually impact the profitability of these investments. Many of the people at the meeting, the author included, had no idea what a private prison was and needed it explained to them. We were told that these prisons were built by privately owned companies who received funding from the government based on the number of inmates. The more inmates, the more money the government would pay these prisons. It was also made clear to us that since these prisons were privately owned, as they became publicly traded, we'd be able to buy shares. Some of the attendees, the author included, were still confused as to what this had to do with them. At that point, the person who opened the meeting explained further. He told us that since our employers had become silent investors in this prison business, it was now in our interest to make sure that these prisons remained filled. Our job would be to help make this happen by marketing music which promotes criminal behavior, rap being the music of choice. He assured us that this would be a great situation for us because rap music was becoming an increasingly profitable market for our companies, and as employees, we'd also be able to buy personal stocks in these prisons. When questioning why the music industry would even involve itself in such a corrupt scheme, the author was told that it was bigger than the music business. According to the author of the letter, music execs agreed to begin promoting hip-hop that glorified criminality and promiscuity, therefore artificially making it more popular than hip-hop that touched on subjects like social consciousness, political awareness, and morality. Rap music was to be used to socially condition the populace to become brutal and lacking in self-awareness. In exchange, the prison execs would give the music execs major stock in the prison industry. For fear of their family's well-being, the author was not willing to share anything regarding that meeting for many years. The author went on to detail how, within only a few months following that meeting in 1991, rap music had changed drastically. I was never a fan of it, but even I could tell the difference. Rap acts that talked about politics or harmless fun were quickly fading away as gangster rap started dominating the airwaves. Only a few months had passed since the meeting, but I suspect that the ideas presented that day had been successfully implemented. It was as if the order had been given to all major label executives. The music was climbing the charts, and most companies were more than happy to capitalize on it. Each one was churning out their own gangster rap acts on an assembly line. Everyone bought into it, consumers included. When speaking to colleagues, the author learned that people working in the industry were morally nonchalant about the issue, and that the industry's manipulation of rap music even strengthened their discriminatory views about minorities. I spoke to a few of my peers in the industry to get their opinions on the new trend, but was told repeatedly that it was all about supply and demand. Sadly, many of them even expressed that the music reinforced their prejudice of minorities. The author quit the music business in 1993. When addressing what compelled them to speak up, the author wrote, "As rap got worse, my guilt grew. Having the internet as a source, which wasn't at my disposal in the early days, made it easier for me to investigate what is now labeled the prison industrial complex. I see how the criminalization of rap music played a big part in promoting racial stereotypes and misguided so many impressionable young minds into adopting these glorified criminal behaviors, which often led to incarceration. 20 years of guilt is a heavy load to carry, but the least I can do now is to share my story, hoping that fans of rap music realize how they've been used for the past 2 decades. My goal now is to get this information out to as many people as possible. Please help me spread the word. Hopefully, others who attended the meeting back in 1991 will be inspired by this and tell their own stories." The author closed out the letter saying, "Most importantly, if only one life has been touched by my story, I pray it makes the weight of my guilt a little more tolerable. Thank you." According to the Louder Than a Riot podcast's October 2020 episode, The Conspiracy Against Hip Hop, many, including people in the hip hop industry, say that this letter is, in fact, fabricated, that none of it is true. The letter was meant to actually create anxiety and prejudice against hip hop culture. Others say that the letter validates suspicions that many conscious rappers and hip hop heads have been voicing for years. The podcast talked about President Ronald Reagan's policy against the use of illegal recreational substances back in the 1980s and the consequences of mass incarceration and the increased aggression in police behavior. The podcast also talked about how the gangster rap that glorified criminality was a cultural response to President Reagan's policies back in the 1980s. Rapper Too Short said his music originally touched on all sorts of material, from political to hypersensual topics. Too Short was actually a pioneer in gangster rap in the 1980s. Back then, the music was on cassettes, with side A being clean music and side B being dirty music. He talked about how the funding for the beginning of his career was acquired from the profits made off of the selling of illegal substances to addicts in the inner cities in order to create a successful career for himself. When addressing his early business practices, he said this: Jimmy Iovine co-founded Interscope Records with Ted Fields in Santa Monica, California in 1990. Interscope Records was Death Row's distribution company, and Iovine spoke on radio show Sway in the Morning about his role in the distribution of gangster rap in the 1990s. Well, you see, I come from a background where artists are allowed to create anything they want to create. That was my history. That's all I knew. It's a very complex issue that I've dealt with on certain levels, and I have had conversations about. But if that's Dre and Snoop's truth, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. I always felt that the artist should be able to express themselves, and I still feel that way. In 1992, Death Row Records, a label established back in 1991 in Los Angeles by rappers The D.O.C., Dr. Dre, Suge Knight, and record producer Dick Griffey led the charge in producing gangsta rap. Too Short talked about a meeting he had with his record boss Barry Weiss around that time, back when he was signed to Jive Records. Weiss encouraged Too Short to lean into producing more of his explicit gangster rap material than any of his other work in order to compete with Death Row Records and make more sales. Too Short agreed to do it, but wanted to even it out by making sure that the album that followed this dirty one was positive. However, he never did release that conscious album. The profits from the dirty albums made way more money. When asked whether he believed the letter, Too Short said he did believe that there was a form of brainwashing going on in the industry, especially with the introduction of trap music, and that rap, as a genre, had devolved. A position that the interviewers found ironic given the blatant misogyny in Too Short's own music and his own responsibility in creating the issue in the first place. In response to this, Too Short said that he wasn't invited to the board meeting and therefore didn't have the power to push or change agendas in the music industry, but that hip-hop, as a culture, had the ability to offer guidance to people who needed it. Politicians were involved in creating policies to increase incarceration, like the Clinton Crime Bill of 1994, the Senate version of which had been drafted by then-Senator Joe Biden. The Clinton Crime Bill of 1994 would go on to be the largest crime bill in the history of the United States. Referring to young people in these communities as quote-unquote super predators became a part of political discourse. In the aftermath of the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, a dossier was created in the 2000s to monitor where rappers performed and intervene if fights broke out. If fights broke out in the audience, the event was shut down, which was a compromise of people's First Amendment right to assemble. At this point in time, hip-hop has been adapted and used in cultures all over the world, with acts like Dynamic Duo, a hip-hop duo from South Korea, Sultana, a female rapper from Morocco, and King Size Terror, a German rap group of Turkish, Peruvian, and German descent, having notable careers of their own. As one can see, rap is for everyone, and all are free to partake in and enjoy it. Learning about how the plague of inner-city addiction was used by dealers to make a profit and even fund the creation of their rap labels made me really sad. Of course, the story is really complex and includes the blatant neglect of these inner-city communities. But I was disappointed that dealers who saw the pain that addiction caused in their own community chose to participate in exacerbating the problem for profit, rather than helping to reduce it for the greater good of the other people around them, especially since some of them were so critical of the dog-eat-dog nature of capitalism, classism, and government incompetence. And I still do have questions. Could there be a collaboration between the music and private prison industries? A collaboration that's responsible for making hip-hop culture look as bad as possible by intentionally promoting its most negative aspects and minimizing its most positive ones for profit? Is the government allowing and using this effort to make sure hip-hop's immense influence on young people doesn't cause them to become aware of how they are manipulated by their society's institutions? And is this one story just one of many arms of a gigantic monster that is taking advantage of the unknowing masses? I don't know the answer to any of these questions, and I probably never will. But one thing I do know is that if it is true that there are powerful people using government and corporate power and influence to manipulate and control the general populace, there's only one word that has the ability to stop their influence over us. It is the most powerful word in any language, and all of our languages share it. It is the word no. And the most important knowledge we will ever receive in life is the knowledge that we all possess individual sovereignty and the power to tell any human who claims to be our master, no. This subject is very complex and strange, but I think that when we all talk openly about these things and share our perspectives, it will get easier to engage with and understand this material. So, tell me your thoughts about this in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.